When I do the details, when I do any details, I'm always using usually a synthetic brush with a really good point. This one is a really nice brush for that. This Perla. This is a Skoda. They're my favorite brushes. And this has got some shadows in here, so I'm just gonna soften all that because that's not the focal point. The focal point of this painting, honestly, is probably this. If I had to pick a focal point, I would say it's probably that. I do want to separate this lighter edge, so I'm just going to come in with a darker edge here, so that comes down here. I want this separation for that sharp edge right there on the bow of the boat. Okay. All right. And I'm going to go ahead in, even though I didn't do this, I'm going to go on in with the shadow again, making sure that it all blends softly. And that's that same mixture, just with more dark in there, more of the blue. And your shadow is always darkest under the form, under whatever it is you're painting. And then it lightens. Normally it lightens as you go out, but this is such a dark shadow. It's pretty much dark all the way out. I am going to make it raggedy because there is grass right here. And I'm going to let this one go right into this shadow. Right in here. It's really dark. And we'll darken that edge up in a little bit. And we don't want a harsh edge on our shadow, so basically you can just wet right around the edge here and your shadow will bleed out. So if I just wet this edge, the shadow will actually bleed out into the sand and make for a really nice shadow. So let's do that. Make sure we get plenty of water right there. Okay. So I'm going to let this dry now. Well, it's drying really fast for some reason. Okay, so let's go in and put in these shadow lines underneath the laps of the boards on the boat. Again, with our mixture of cobalt blue and burnt sienna. I'm going to make a nice dark. Basically, it looks like this. It's almost a black. Or you could just use Payne's Gray if you'd rather. And I'm going to do my best to get a fine line here and start the shadows spreading out as it comes under here. And that you can use a liner brush for this. You can also, let's make that wider there. The way to get the wider line is to just press down with your brush, add more pressure to it, and for a finer line you just lift up, and that's how we get that. And these shadows aren't perfect, so again we want to just suggest that the laps, and I want to go ahead and do this because I'm losing my pencil drawing here. So I've kind of lost the actual boards themselves. So I'm going to get back in there and get those. And then I don't want this line so harsh, so I'm going to soften that right there. And I'm going to soften this. So the way we soften it is just to take clean water on the tip of our brush and soften it down, just going along like that. All right, let's identify where the other board is. I think I found it there. you can see this shadow is much wider down here, and this one was much wider here. But I think this should curve more. This line should actually curve more, I think. Coming back here. And I think I've left another one out that was right here. So lines, even though remember I darkened in the lines with the pencil, still managed to lose the lines up in here. So it's very easy to do. Very easy to do. So you got to keep establishing these things over and over and over. That's the shadow up under the trim on the boat. A very light line, and it fades out, so it's darker in here. And you can actually see this better from the from your black and white photo. You can see how there's a shadow up in here. It pretty much squares off and then comes back here. Then we've got a definite edge here. I've actually changed this a little bit. Mine's a little wider, so it should probably come like this. Actually, define that. All right, and we got some dark marks up in here, just in the wood itself. So we'll put those in. Okay. And that's about as hard as I'm going to make the detail on that, I think, because I really don't want it to be so harsh. And I'm going to just keep building this boat and the edge of this boat. Where I see definite lines, I will put definite lines. And I'm going to wash this out, soften it, just so there aren't any, we don't want it to look pasted and cut out. That's always the thing that I'm fighting against with realism. It's easy to get that pasted look. I'm actually going to add quite a bit of blue to this right here. I just went straight into my straight cobalt blue just to give that kind of a silver look. That's really pretty. Okay, I like that. And actually I think I'm going to make these slats particularly, I'm going to make the front edge bluer here so I can define that. So I'm going to go in and define that front edge. And remember, this is doesn't need to be highly detailed because this is the in the background of your boat. And then I'm just going to carry that up into here for the actual boards themselves. And for this, I'll go ahead and put that in right here. So we're just suggesting these things. And for the seat, which I really like, I'm going to make that bluer just to give it some contrast. And this as well. Okay. I probably won't do much more to the interior of the boat just because I don't want it to look too harsh. I am going to go in with our sand color though, which was the same as the sand, because this little tip right here, which is an ornamentation, needs to have a little more definition. So I'll put some blue on that. Suggest that. All right, and I keep forgetting this little this little board that's, I guess, holding the boat up. And it's a stand, I guess. It's like that. And it comes to a point right at the end like that, and that needs to be a little wider. Okay, so I like that. I might soften that a little bit. All right, so now let's go back to our colors. Now, and you see we've got some of these gorgeous burnt sienna colors that are in the boat itself. So I just want to add some of that. This is with a dry brush. Okay, a dry brush is barely wet. Okay, that is like the primer probably coming through on the boat. I see a little bit of it coming down here because you can see it peeking through. That's better. Okay, like that. I could make the boat itself darker, but I'm going to bring everything up at the same time, so we'll decide about that. Now what I'm going to do is go back to my wash up here and work on that. I'm really kind of happy with the sand down here. I do want to add a little bit of the grass that's in here, but I think I'm going to wet it first so that it's very soft. And there's a little grass under here, and that grass comes right on here. Those are kind of weeds, I suppose. It's not really grass, it's kind of weeds. We'll just suggest it here. Bring it to the edge of the boat. Right. And fade it off like that. And have it just randomly here and there, like it's grass. Okay, and then we're going to put some of the, and you know there are weeds up under there, so we'll just go ahead and do that. And soften that, because you just want the suggestion that there's some kind of weeds or grass or whatever that it's sitting on. I'm going to go ahead and bring that in because I think it's better that it sits on a whole thing of grass here. Okay, and I probably won't do much other than that. I may splatter a little bit down here just to soften this so it's not such a, I like the effects of splatter. So when you get it everywhere, if you do get it everywhere, just be quick about it and pick it up. Like that. And if I want this to be more interesting, I can actually mist the splatters and let them run. That'll loosen our background up a lot.